Well, it's the most dangerous cult, at least to all of us in the studio today, and we usually think of a cult as totally non-Christian. We seldom think of a cult within the church today. And quoting Dr. Walter Martin, who said years ago, "I know liberals, I know them well, I was one of them, and they are the most dangerous, insidious, all-pervading cult that's loose in the United States right at the moment." And my guests are my frequent co-hosts for this radio program, Eric Barger and Jill Martin Rishi, daughter of Dr. Walter Martin. And Eric Barger says that political correctness seems to dominate what will or will not be addressed from our pulpits. He also says that the spiritual liberalism of a few decades ago has spawned ecumenism, mysticism, and the emergent redefinition of Christianity that denies the Bible and turns the ecclesiology of the church into a platform for liberal social causes and environmentalism, etc. So welcome, both of you, to the program today, Jill and Eric.
Thanks, Jan.
Eric, give us a few more examples of more recent illustrations of what you're suggesting. And you referenced to me the UCC in Canada, but you go ahead and expand a little bit here.
Well, I think the downfall of doctrine and holding to the scripture in the seminaries, Bible colleges, denominations is pretty much widespread. It's across the board. It's certainly not every professor. It's certainly not everybody or every church, but we see this going on in evangelical circles almost as a satanic redo of what took place 150 or so years ago in the once evangelical, now what we call mainline denominations.
And we've talked about this before on this program. I mean, we've done probably half a dozen programs with either directly talking about this, the new confused evangelicals, and other programs. And we're basing some of our information today off of a new DVD Eric's made. We'll get to that in just a moment. Jill, Rishi, why do you feel liberalism is a cult?
Well, it's a cult because it's focused around someone else's interpretation of the scripture. Mm-hmm. So what the liberal mind does and the liberal spirit is they go into the Bible, they extract certain things from it, they focus on those, and they choose to discard the rest. So they are taking the Bible and making of it what they will. So it's focused around beliefs that are not consistent with what Jesus Christ has taught us and what is taught in the Bible.
But liberal Christians say they are Christians, believe they are Christians, they hold to various tenets of the faith that we hold to, but they also deny or ignore some of the foundational doctrines or creeds of historic Christianity. Would I be right there?
Absolutely. I always go to 2 Timothy 4:3, where it says, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables." And I think this also speaks to the fact that they take what they want and keep what they like and throw the rest away.
Jan, that is exactly right. One of the slides from the DVD presentation says, Bible believers define the culture by the Bible, but liberals define the Bible by the culture. They look to see what's culturally acceptable instead of preaching the truth to the culture that needs to hear that truth.
We are carrying a new DVD by Eric. It's called The Cult of Liberalism. It's an update from an older message that he has, so it's the 2015 version. We're carrying it in our store, olivetreeviews.org, or give us a call. And as we move along, you'll get a little bit of an idea. Some of what we're going to talk about is obviously going to be in this DVD. We may go down some other paths as well, but I think the basics will be in that DVD. But Eric, let me ask this question of you. What belief systems fall into this? Now, I can probably guess that a few of them do. The postmodernism fits in there, emergent church, social gospel type theology, red letter Christians, the Tony Campolos, the Jim Wallaces, the Shane Claibornes, the Rob Bells. What am I missing?
Well, I mean, you just about named it right there. And if we go back just maybe 15, 20 years, how often we saw the guys from the Jesus Seminar being interviewed on television, national television. They were regulars on Nightline. And those were the John Dominic Crossins and Marcus Borgs and others. And these are the guys who really don't believe what the scripture says. They want to believe what they want out of it, as we've already pointed out, but they don't want to take the whole thing as a work from God. They've gone as far as to try to determine which of the words they think Jesus said, which of the words they believe he never said in the Gospels, and the words that they hope he said. That's what this is. It's all about taking the scripture apart, and just like all these other battles that we talk about, this is a battle for the Bible right inside the church.
Okay, well, I want to go back to a little bit where I opened. I'm directing this back at you again, Eric, because I want some more illustrations of how it's manifesting here in 2015. And you and I have talked about what the United Church of Christ in Canada is doing, Presbyterian Church USA, some of the other, the ELCA and others, and homosexual marriage, etc. Bring us up to a date a little bit about how you see it. We've talked endlessly in previous programs about the mainline Protestant church 100 years ago. Let's talk 2015.
One of the most heretical statements I've ever seen from a liberal leader was when Catherine Jeffers Shorey, who was the Episcopal presiding bishop of their church, made this statement. She said that it's the great Western heresy that you can be saved as individuals, that anyone alone can be in a right relationship with God. She says it's a heresy to believe in personal salvation. I mean, just think about how that leads people, where it takes them if they would believe what she's saying.
All right, but you have some more illustrations. I'd like to hear them.
You know, Jan, I think I need to preface this by saying that whenever we talk about this, I know it makes people uncomfortable when you start mentioning denominations or Bible colleges or whatever in a negative light. And we're not doing that because we relish in it. We don't want to sit back here and just throw stones and say how right we are and how wrong somebody else is. But this is about the central, essential doctrines of the faith. And really, to define what a cult is people who believe in things other than the essential doctrines of the faith that have held us together. That's one of the definitions I give right at the very beginning of the video, that we've got to understand these are people who decided to believe something different about the major doctrines of the faith. I'll give you another example here. This is the bishop of the ELCA church, and he makes the statement, the understanding we have of homosexuality today does not seem to be reflected at all in the context of the biblical writers. This is the way he answers this. This is what you should do. He says, Lutherans should consider more modern views on sexual orientation. So he's telling them to disregard what the scripture says about this issue. And take a look what's going on around us in the church. The ELCA has voted not long ago during the tornado in Minneapolis that we've talked about on air. They have voted to accept that kind of thing as normal inside the church. Now, here's another one for you. This is how far it's gone. We've got at least two examples. One of them, United Methodist Church in Dallas, and one of them was Chapman University in Orange County, California, that have brought witches in, pagans in, to either give seminars or to dedicate land that they've got. Have we forgotten what the scripture says about those kind of lifestyles? I think that's part of the problem. This is how it plays out. And I try to point this out, that you look at all the doctrinal problems, you look at the theological inconsistencies, you look at the way the Bible is being treated, and the way this ends up is it plays out in our lives in the world, and with the people who follow them, it plays out in such a negative way that they begin to follow things that are directly opposed to God and what the scripture says.
If you just joined me, you are listening to Understanding the Times Radio, and I'm Jan Markell, and I have in studio Eric Barger and Joe Martin Rishi, and we are discussing the cult of liberalism. And I opened by indicating that actually liberal Christians say they are Christian. They believe they are Christians, and they hold to the various tenets of the faith that we hold to, but they also deny or ignore some foundational doctrines and creeds of historic Christianity. And Jill, some of these folks actually start out as solid Bible believers, and then all of a sudden something happens, and suddenly they're on a different pathway called liberalism. And what do you think happens?
Well, I think you see this all of the time, and it has to do with our hearts. Our hearts are desperately wicked. That is what Scripture teaches, desperately wicked, and they lie to us. So sometimes people start out on the right path, and then they listen to their hearts. They listen to lies. They listen to outside influences, and they begin to change, and that's the nature of humanity. We are always changing, and not for the better a lot of times.